The land remains, the way we use it may change over time. It was here before, it'll be here long after. This property was native bush, then turned into farming, maize, kiwifruit orchard today. You know, it could be restored back to native tomorrow, we don't know. To exercise who we are and our values of our kaitiaki in this time period, we plant those seeds and grow those trees that we may not enjoy the shade of. Ko taranaki te maunga, ko pātia te awa tapu, ko ngā rauru Ngāti Rua nui te pakokohi te iwi, ko rangitāwhi te hapu, ko taranga moana taku kāinga tipu, ko au te mana hautu Mātai Pacific Iwi Collective, ko Charles Asuahau, kia ora. We're on our Te Mātai block, which is our tomato orchards block. 160 hectares, of which 65 hectares is kiwifruit, split about 35 hectares of sun gold and 30 hectares of Hayward green. We're a young organisation, so only 8 years young. The iwi purchased this taonga, which is 100 sort of canopy hectares of kiwifruit across approximately 225 hectares of total land area.
Mātai Pacific's a couple of things. I think one, it's a collective of Māori shareholders. You know, we're a combination of two iwi entities who essentially are post-settlement governance entities from treaty settlements and a Māori corporation, working together and collaborating and investing together in the kiwifruit industry. But I think it's bigger than that. You know, I think it's an example of collaboration, which is probably new for all three of us. You know, and we're trying it in horticulture. So this idea of kotaitanga and collaborating is something that we're pretty proud of. That's what Mātai Pacific is to me.
We'll just see how the colour's looking.
Quality is really important, you know, it sets our product apart from kiwifruit that's grown in other regions throughout the world.
Canopy's a nice height, it's clean, it's tidy, it's well mown, and you just see them go, oh, it's a good place to be.
We need to protect this taonga, you know, this taonga, this land, but also this fruit and that we're blessed to work in and deal with. We have to be responsible and see and make decisions today that are going to affect a positive future and a positive outcome.
We'd been dabbling on the edges, I guess, under the previous ownership, and then our first project was behind us here. It was part of the Waikakapu project, restoration, because it flows into the Waihi estuary, so there was a big push to sort of improve the water quality. So it was a bit of a major undertaking. You know, to the credit of Mātai Pacific Iwi Collective at the time, they'd only just brought the orchards. You know, they'd laid out a lot of money to buy the orchards, and all of a sudden I go to them and go, well, do you want to get involved with this? And it's quite a big project, so yeah, they jumped on board, you know, very quickly actually. With Charles now on board as CEO, we're just pushing things, you know, taking things to the next level. With we've got some big lofty plans of what we'd like to plant going forward, and the board's certainly up for it.
That why flows through everything that we do. If you want to be a successful kiwifruit organisation, it's all about the water and how you effectively manage it. So it's about making sure, you know, that we're filtering, that we've built up those biodiversity areas, that we have the wetland and natural filters. We're probably one of the larger organisations that entered into a program with Hort New Zealand and Zespri for the freshwater farm plans. That particularly gave us insight to the areas where we can mitigate, change and build projects for the future, and to support, to set a strategy and a plan to implement those adaptation, resilience and biodiversity strategies over time. It's no small feat, 15,000 plants, you know, over a number of weeks. So we've planted 6.1 hectares. We're focused on slowing sedimentation loss, building resilience for the future with slips and floods, etc. So we've got a 5-year planting or replanting restoration program in partnership with Bay of Plenty Regional Council. And then this is one of the steps, so we'll look to replicate this amount of area next year. Both Bay of Plenty Regional Council and ourselves have identified the at-risk areas with water sedimentation loss, but there are things that we can do in regards to planting that can stem that water flow to support any long-term sedimentation loss over time.
And as I've learned through Charles and this whole process, it's leaving it in a better state than how you found it. My wife and I, we own orchards. What we've learned on the Mātai Pacific sites, we ourselves have now started doing native tree planting and restoration programs ourselves. So what we've learnt, we're now implementing ourselves. So it's that whole knowledge transfer and I guess a better understanding of the whenua where we are.
You right, Tucker? Yeah, sweet as, mate. Alright, kia ora guys. Today we're getting those nice new ones. Alright, they're bright red, they stick up.
Being a Māori organisation, we can have a lot of kaimahi that are Māori that pick the fruit and prune the fruit and that, but where's the management? And so I think our focus is on having Māori that are in senior leadership roles, management roles, and they're able to capture and employ those of their like in the future.
Don't leave nice long ones like this, otherwise too much grows back. Tom actually rang me because I had worked for him previously. It's like, hey, I've seen you've actually finished the horticulture studies. I'm looking for managers. And I'm like, oh, excellent. I'm actually looking to become a manager.
I love training young individuals coming through. In-house, we have our own cadet program of training managers, and I'm happy to say I've got individual managers that are better than me. But I take that as a compliment because we've taught them well.
Tom was supporting me with outside work stuff, and then even with Charles with everything I sort of don't know around zespri. He's like, oh, you go and do that. Like, this is stuff you don't really know much about. It's like a movie, you don't see that stuff. In real life you don't expect it to happen, but when it does happen, you're like, oh wow, like this stuff actually does happen to people. So that was pretty cool. Yeah. And anything sort of just outside, like the second and third wire, get that one too, please.
Kōrero like he kai o kuringa. Prosperity comes through the fruits of our hard work, and so the hard work here happens on the orchard. Kai mahi, those are the ringa, the waiwai of Mātai Pacific. For us, our responsibility is how do we make those opportunities? How do we grow? How do we recognise the efforts of the likes of Alex, Tom? Tom's got a very strong whakapapa to this land. And so how do we use those as examples and role models for our tamariki coming through?
I've worked in a lot of industries, but you get a lot of benefit from growing food. Not just tangible like you can eat it, but it feels good working in the garden. Even sometimes when I get upset, I'll just go and do a little bit of kiwi fruit work by myself, and then boom, makes me feel better. It's food for your soul, not just food to eat. These are plants, they react differently to what you do to them. You could do the wrong thing and it won't like it and it'll sulk and die. You do the right thing and it'll produce for you. And it does, same way with anything. You look after it, you take care of it, manaakitanga, it thrives. Yeah.
The kai can be prosperity. Putia, or the financial economic benefit that Mātai create, enables our partner entities to reinvest that into kaumātua grants and areas that help develop and support to build our culture and our social. And then we also, we're enriched by feeding the world. I've been blessed to visit, the European markets, China, the United States, and to see our fruit right there in a supermarket is something special.
Mātai Pacific thinks 10 years out, 20 years out, and it's how can we give sustainable wealth and leave a legacy. So it's that long-term thinking and the thinking about what are we leaving for the next generation. We're leaving the whenua, and we want the whenua to be better than what it was before, as well as bringing the people through and respecting the work that the people do as well.
I mean, our guiding kaupapa is around how do we utilise our collective strengths? You know, how do we utilise that to lead in the industry, ideally with the ability to pass on our learnings to other Māori entities. You know, the old saying that what's good for Māori is good for New Zealand Aotearoa is something that's very real for us. And I think we're starting to see that come through, particularly in the areas around kaitiakitanga and how we look after our tai ao and how that looks after us. You know, horticulture is important to us because it creates a lot of jobs. That's pretty front of mind in terms of our thinking. I think the opportunities is how do we grow our people right throughout the value chain? How do we grow our people right throughout the industry? So when we're lucky enough to go overseas, and we've started to see that happen in the last few years, you start to see more of the Māori story coming through to help tell the bigger story around New Zealand, around Aotearoa, around kiwifruit. You know, so that's a really exciting part. You know, I don't want to limit ourselves. We're all from the Bay of Plenty. So, you know, we'll all have a strong interest in our local economy. But in saying that, you know, our commitment is how do we share those experiences with other Māori too. So you never know, there might be, at some point in time in the future, we might be growing outside of Aotearoa. We might be growing outside of kiwifruit. Yeah, ko wai ko mohi.